the lobby. We're just waiting for the players to get themselves ready to rock and roll. Thank you so much, guys, for joining us tonight. We've got about, 530 people tuning in right now. Not quite the 2,500 we had for opening night, but that is because we were on the Blizzard launcher. So those are different circumstances, right? But hey, definitely get your engagement up in chat. I've been watching every so often what you guys have been saying, troll as it may be. Here we go. Sky Temple, the final game of the night. All tied up, one apiece. Crimson versus Outlaws. Deary me.
Yeah, that's it, Scammy. I mean, we were expecting this series to be a rather close one. We're expecting both of these teams to be contesting that number 2 spot in the league. And after the previous series that we saw, Crimson versus Downfall, I'm not too sure of the power levels of some of these teams or where some of these teams might be ending up placing, but this series is very much living up to the hype.
Outlaws with the map pick, meaning Crimson once again with that first pick. They take out the Maiev. Now, the really interesting point is, where do Outlaws go with this? They're currently hovering a Dahaka ban. So, much like we said, it should be a very big point of contention. They are now hovering the Tracer. And much after what they did last game, realizing that, hey, Tracer was banned away in the first rotation, it really aided us in that regard. And if they are first pick, I would almost guarantee they'd want to pick Tracer in that first.
Yeah, it does allow them to be much more aggressive. We were talking about how we need Crimson to be on the aggressive side of things. They need to be the proactive team. And Tracer allows them to do that while also having that really nice back-to-front team fight that we saw on Tomb of the Spider Queen. That's not going to be available to them, but they do manage to pick up the Blaze for themselves.
They do. Blaze locked on in. And it was a big part of that last game. So many times Gondo in questionable positions, but the fact that he had a bunker on such a short cooldown was almost a get out of jail free card on far too many times to actually count up on a tally. Because Bullet followed up with all the CC dive in the world was fantastic, but the guy is just a absolute monster to try and take on down. And, especially on a map like this, the point control is going to be fantastic in that regard. The response really for Outlaws has to be sharp. We've seen a very big priority on the Malfurion for Hiccup, but with the Tyrael as well, we know that Dicebolt has played it in the past. It's whether or not they want to pick it in this first rotation as a denial towards that Blaze combo.
And there are other things on the board. Will they pick up the Malfurion? We saw the strength of that. And we saw Crimson time and time again wanting to dive, and if they weren't able to lock down the Malfurion for long enough, that Twilight Dream was just completely turning that fight on its head. So another strong pickup for the side of the Outlaws, and they're going to just take the Grey Man away from them as well.
Pretty much a repeat of what we saw in the previous draft. You go for the Grey Man in that first rotation, and you flex that other pick, be it either a Tyrael, or in this case for the Outlaws, the comfort pick of a Malfurion. So between Outlaws as well as Downfall, very high priority on picking these supports when it comes to the Stukov as well as this Malfurion. Now, if this is information that a team can capitalize on, you'd have to wait and see how they decide to respond towards it. Because this is something quite, I suppose, prevalent in the ANZ region, right? Relative to other scenes, we are a minor region. We are a lot smaller, and the incentive to play, not as career-worthy, so to speak. Hence why we have exports like, Arcana and Robodoba to the EU region. So these aren't players that play this game all day, every day, that can scrim for, 12 hours each night. Hero pools, in many cases, can be quite small. So this is something that you can look to abuse if you're a team manager.
Yeah, interestingly enough, it does end up being a rather flip in what we saw from the previous draft. Now we have the Blaze, ETC, and the Tychus all on the side of Crimson now.
The ETC, to me, just screams that they don't want to ban it. They don't want to have that easy pick comp of ETC and Malfruit. So what interests me is where Outlaws go with this one. I was wondering if they go for the Tyrael ban to prevent the all-incredible Wombo combo, but that would mean you'd have a triple frontline, which wouldn't really be too desirable. We've seen what a single DPS can do for Crimson tonight, and it's been kind of lackluster to say the least. And they are considering that Gordon. Now, you'd have that burst from Tychus and the sustain, or I suppose the sustain from Tychus as well, to complement it, as well as what Gordon was able to do against Coffee on Greyman on Tomb of the Spider Queen, the direct counter.
And now we're into the second round of bans. Just interested where they go. The Gordon taken away. We saw the strength that it had in the first game of this series on Tomb of the Spider Queen. It doesn't necessarily have the same priority in terms of wave clear on this map, but it does do very well against the Greymane that we saw them pick out, and the Horrifier just completely dismantling a lot of these very aggressive styles, just not wanting to deal with that yet again. And it looks like the Tyrael might be the ban. I think that's very likely to be taken off the board. We've seen its strength. The Sanctification is so very strong. The amount of shielding he can bring, and just he's so very good right now.
I mean, he's in a fantastic support situation, right? Almost a case of, if you're not going to get a direct tank, you can almost have that off tank. And given that he's had a bit of a rework in some capacity, he is a definite ban. And there you see it. Tyrael taken off the board once again. Now Outlaws with 2 picks to complement their squad so far. Malfurion and Greymane. Nothing too telling of where they are going, what kind of direction they're looking to try and follow. I wouldn't be too surprised here if we do see a Dahaka. Now, what's interesting is that the ETC has already been taken away. ETC might, well, you'd imagine we'll probably go for the more traditional solo mosh bit and have that Blaze as a solo lane. But we've seen many occasions that the ETC gets picked up as the matchup against Blaze, because he can match the support in terms of sustain with his heal, but also he can match and almost out-rotate because he can go for the stage dive on a map like this. So I'm wondering if Gondo thinks that, hey, I can't win against the Blaze, but I can try and force these fights. Give me Dahaka.
That is an option, and especially on a map like Sky Temple, where it is one of the larger maps, and being able to get around that when we're getting a lot of these objective plays happening is very important, and that stage dive could be very important as we get later and later into the game. And that is going to be the Dahaka picked up on the side of Outlaws. As you mentioned, he is going to be able to play around the map and make plays that way. And we're seeing the Garrosh again tonight. Very strong hero as well. Indeed,
it is. This is a bit of a flavor of the month hero, right? It was definitely out in the meta for such a long time. And ever since the changes were made to his Groundbreaker kit, people are actually realizing, oh, hang on, he actually is still very strong in regard to what the rest of his kit can do. So let's not have that kind of Reddit reaction of like, oh, Blizzard, you just ruined the game.
Yeah, the hero's dead now. He no longer exists anymore. Actually, that's not how it goes. He is still just as good. It just means you have to do the combination in reverse. Throw them around, instant stun, and then all of a sudden you have this really strong follow-up. Especially when things like the Malfurion to have instant roots. Almost like how a Stitches works. You get hooked straight into the roots. Similar style, but just not as clean cut, I guess I'll say. And they also have the damage to follow up Greymane, and also potentially a Dahaka. And we still have yet to see what their last pick is going to be, and they can be rather flexible with it.
That they can really indeed. And what's interesting for me with Crimson so far is they have a lot of CC chains, right? You got the flip, then into a tongue, then into a root. So that's a time when a person can be isolated for such a long time between a Warlord's challenge with the taunt, potentially an isolation, even a Twilight Dream. A lot of ways to try and lock somebody down, but you've got the tools where you don't have to be so one-dimensional in that approach, but you can combine them together or do them individually, and they still retain a lot of that strength, meaning that you'd imagine Coffee should be on this Greymane, is able to output maximum DPS. Now that Junkrat's there, that would be Lahar on the Greymane, but the point still stands.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was thinking that Junkrat is still very good and still very decent at disrupting a lot of those CC chains that we're looking at on the side of Crimson. So Coffee going back to his tried and true, and it was very good in that previous game, getting a lot of work done. And we'll look to do the same in this one.
The concerning point for me is the poke, really. The poke that Junkrat can emit. If it's enough to really pressure the Shadow, we saw what Ufa can do before. Not enough sustain to make sure they can live through all of this. I'm even questioning if he's going to go for the Hand of Protection instead of maybe just a Guardian of the Ancient Kings, right? Just make sure that all these members get that armor to survive through all this. They pop into a Blaze's bunker. Suddenly you're popping out and you're basically taking no damage because you kind of got this massive ignore pain present on everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing we also need to note is also the Holy Cow combination of the Divine Shield and Mosh Pit, which is the potential for them to pick up. So we're talking about the potential of this ETC going for a stage dive, but have to keep that in mind as well.
Lots of things to keep in mind. If you go to game number 3, the final game of tonight in the very first night of action for week number 2 in ANZ's HGC. On the right-hand side, it is Outlaws fighting for victory. It's Lahal on Greymane. Hiccup once again on Malfurion. Coffee playing his coveted Junkrat. Gondo on the famous Dahaka, and Icebold Water flexing his might on Garrosh.
And on the blue, it is Crimson. We have Altivian on the Tychus, Azure is on the Li Ming, Shadow is on the Uther, KVA is on ETC, and Jesmez looking to blaze it up.
Looking to blaze it up indeed. 420 is going to be the kill count for this one. As I make terrible dad jokes and we roll the clip. Nobody's going to be talking about that in chat. We have to have a laugh. You know, you can't be so serious. You got to have a bit of a laugh from time to time.
Yeah, just got to have a bit of a giggle. Makes kind of loosen the tension, I guess, from time to time. Especially with a series like this, we're looking at it to be rather important for some of the implications regarding who we send to the Intercontinental Clash, as we do have a great engage going on towards Azure.
We do indeed. Azure gets dropped low, but the patience from the Shadow, dearie me, that guy was just like, I'm going to wait, and it's going to pay off, and rightfully so. They nearly managed to turn that one around by taking out Lahul, but oh dear, if they had face checked that one, there was nowhere for Shadow to run.
Yeah, it looked like it was going to be a very secure kill coming out for the Outlaws, but just enough inside of Crimson to keep that Leming alive, so they're going to be very happy to get out of that without too much losses, and it looks like we're just having some rather back and forth trading early on, just waiting for these first objectives to be coming up.
First objectives will be the name of this game. Both teams utilising the fact that the Giants spawn a lot quicker now. I actually quite like the quality of life change behind this, because it just means a lot more heroes are able to reliably take them, and if you're good, you can start to step those shots, almost like you can see them right now with those predicted markers. The same now applies for the camp. Such a nice small little change added to the game.
Yeah, just a quality of life change that really makes it, well, I guess, easier to deal with those camps, but also, as you mentioned, makes it easier to take them, and especially early on, allowing all these lanes to just have so much more pressure and allow these teams to have more options in this early game.
That they do indeed. The Night Camp's being picked up very early on as well, and that provides that 20 spell armor to all the members that stand within its radius. This is a bit of a change to what we used to see on Sky Temple. Right now, teams can utilize this quite early on, look for that kind of potential to fight, and have the ability to try and stick around and fight for a while. KVA and Ice Bowl flexing their tanking might on this point, looking for the vision. Vision very important, especially for this middle shrine. Being able to control that one as Coffee comes across, might be looking to try and use that mine to disrupt things, but say, the pressure is already being applied onto Shadow to try and keep these members sustained as they pick fights in the top side, as well as at that vision point too.
Yeah, just fighting on multiple fronts, both teams, as we are looking for a flip potential coming out of Iceball, but he just cops a lot of damage in the backswing.
Does indeed. Iceball drop very low down. There's going to be a lot of pressure really on Li Ming to try and find these kills. You're going to have to imagine that, yeah, I was going to say, no, go for the throw would have been a good option if they had got Greyman on their side, but, you know, they decided not to go for that. They decided to go in the rhythm, make sure this minigun does a lot of damage as we speak of, and he gets low, he's running away! Surely one Moonfire! No, down to 100. He manages to live.
Just gets out of there in time. We saw that at the bottom side, just managing to get out of there with a slither of health. It was Azure that time. This time it is going to be the Tychus. But now we have the Temples up and available. It looks like it's going to be the top one going over to the side of Outlaws, as all the members of Crimson are starting to move towards this central one.
It's interesting actually that Crimson have prioritized the central one, given that they didn't have the vision point. They now go for it as the rest of the teams respond, and Jesmis almost has to act a little bit reactively in this case, because Gondo, if he's down there as that global threat, he has to deal with it, but also be very aware of, you know, when is Gondo going to utilize that Brush Stalker.
Yeah, he doesn't have any kind of tool to get back or get to the rest of the team, as a flip does go down onto Altivian, but doesn't have the damage threat of next or nearby him, as they do get a nice tongue drag down onto him.
That they do. They're looking for Altivian, gets the heal, and he does have the Guardian of the Ancient Kings, as mentioned, which is a lovely little adaptation. I love this pickup here. As I said, combine it with the bunker, a lot of armor should be a very big deciding point if they can try and combine this together. A lot more forgiving than trying to stack a sound barrier and a sanctification together.
Yeah, as we saw in the previous game, just how forgivable some of these heroes can be with your positioning. We saw, I believe it was Gondo on the Blaze in the previous game. Sure, he was caught out, he takes a whole bunch of damage, but he just drops down a bunker and all of a sudden he's fine. We're seeing that similarly here with the Uther, just putting out a whole bunch of armor and making it much tougher to push through. So as we get late into this game, there's going to be quite a few options on the side of Crimson to deal with some of the potential pick plays coming out from Outlaws. If we do have potential again onto KVA, but he is going to be just fine for now.
That's the combo you're looking for, right? The old Wrecking Ball into the Groundbreaker, and ETC stuck in a route thinking, well, I need a bit of support right now. Forces out the power slide, but does act as the anchor and the vision ward to ensure that both teams pick up their giant camps right now. But the story of the game is, despite having the global for Outlaws, they are down a whole level lead as Iceball gets low, forced to pop the Indomitable. He does manage to survive very lucky out of down to 250.
It looked like that Arcane Orb was going to be able to pretty much finish off IBW, but it was that Siege Giant that managed to block the shot, so nice. Well, I guess a little bit fortunate there for the side of Outlaws that they don't lose their front liner, but still, Crimson do maintain control of this lane. They are going to be able to force back the members of Outlaws, but they're coming in with the Brush Stalker of Gondo, and this forces Crimson back.
To be quite honest though, it doesn't actually achieve anything. The Brush Stalker, if anything, has been completely wasted on such a high cooldown. You can see that Jesmes has no intention. He tried to force it within such slim margins. They hit level 10 now. He can rotate, and there's a big window for them to execute within. Yeah, and level 10 is now up. It is going to be the Mosh Pit, so wanting to go with that Holy Cow combo with the Divine Shield and the Mosh Pit, and this just forces Outlaws all the way back. They know that they cannot come anywhere near the side of Crimson while they have those heroics up. I suppose the biggest talking point of tonight, we've seen a lot of Grey main, but Lahar has opted for the Cocktail build, got 7 of the 15 stacks. You could make an argument that this is good given it is up against an Uther, but as I said before, the prog rock between all the armor, surely it feels quite lackluster as a result though.
Yeah, there's a lot of sustain on the side of Crimson. As you mentioned, the prog rock, the Uther, even the Blaze, who has his own inbuilt sustain just sitting in the fire. It's poke damage that can be mitigated a fair bit, so it's very interesting that he is going in that direction.
It's almost as if they're trying to accentuate the role of Coffee, saying we'll chuck out some grenades, we'll chuck out some flasks, we'll poke them down before they can try and fully engage, which is, I suppose, ideal in theory. He has gone for the Cursed Bullet as well, so trying to replicate what we saw before. Whether or not they can get the success with it is what we'll have to wait and see. And I'm quite excited to see how they actually try and plan it out.
Yeah, nothing too out of the ordinary when it comes to heroics. It is going to be... We're not seeing the Disintegrate from Gleaming. Instead, the Wave of Force, we have been seeing it be used to some devastating effect through the Western Clash with the level 20 upgrade, just launching people in from downtown and just demolishing them on the spot. So looking forward to that should we get later and later into this game.
Crimson going to the top lane and really starting to pack a punch with this XP lead right now. Looking to rotate down.
Interestingly enough.
Has been started. Jesmes does have that vision. Do they have enough time to try and rotate on through? He should be able to buy a fair bit of time with a bunker juking in and juking out. And that is going to be the case. Yeah, absolutely. Level 13 is not there, but I mean, they're going to have a lot of point control for this. Yeah, and it looks like they're just going to turn on to Gondo. He just gets demolished immediately. Gondo through any potential chance of them trying to go for that one. And now it's a free boss. Ultivian pops the Odin, literally saying, I can stop you doing this. Explosive Mine comes out. Warlord's Challenge comes out as well. Face spell is perfect. The boss is picked up. Bunker in, out, say goodbye, sweet dreams. And Garish goes down. Yeah, that was just a very dangerous gambit coming out of Outlaws. They wanted to force the play. They knew that all of the members of Crimson were on the top side, but because of the Blaze just being in and around there, they were just really delaying that as Coffee is going to get demolished. He does use the might to get himself out of there, and it looks like he's actually going to survive against all odds. So lucky. Literally down to like 100 health from the Azure combo to follow up everything that was thrown at him. Hiccup is there, and he is there to support. But now the boss is doing its job. It is supported by a giant camp, and it is going to take out the very 2 towers that prevents this keep from falling on down. But with 2 temples being active, these shots in the bottom lane will be firing towards the keep, which will give them some permanent pressure. Yeah, and this is already a rather significant lead coming out for Crimson. They have so much pressure coming out, having the level lead, the talent advantage. Outlaws, it's going to be a struggle for them to get back into this. It's interesting, right? Because during the draft, we were saying that there's a lot of combinations that the Outlaws can utilize. But once again, like I almost saw from when they played Sky Temple against Nomia, the execution just hasn't been there. A few of these times, Gondo's tried to get that flank or tried to utilize that brush stalking global capacity, but he hasn't been able to net that advantage that it should arguably be able to give them. Yeah, we just saw, it was just a very great turn coming out from the side of Crimson. They saw that Gondo was coming in and they just demolished him before he could get any kind of advantage. And before the rest of the team could really help him out there. So it was more or less just a great play coming out of Shadow, or not Shadow, just the rest of the team just of Crimson, that they were able to just clean him up
before there was any support coming in for that potential play.
10 minutes into this game, and the scoreboard reflects a very slow game when it comes to kills. Only 2 kills have we witnessed so far in this one, but the XP advantage is starting to become a lot bigger than that. Level 16 on the horizon, but they're looking for the fight right there. Iceball Water gets dropped on low. Indomitable has been forced. He goes for the combo, looking for Shadow, and he has the Mosh. Oh, actually, no, he has the Divine Shield himself. Falls on down. I thought a Mosh was going to happen, but he gets dropped. Isolation is there. This is the
great.
Outlaws to find it, but the bunker being such a deterrent. They slip into J-Smith, but he doesn't care. He is the beast that he is. Or is he? He's going to fall down. No! Oh, Tivian just... Oh my dear, he just made something happen out of nothing and turned this fight around, but it looks so disastrous. He makes it all happen. I tell you what, Azure and Altivian are popping off right now. They try to actually turn things around. But GL Phoenix, dearie me.
Give me so many low health bars, and we're talking about, you're just saying this has been a reasonably slow game when it comes to the kills, and it's because no one is dying in this. There's so many low health bars. First we see Coffee getting out with the slither of health, and then it looked like they were going to be able to survive that Riptide, but the Divine Shield went on to the full health Uther instead of the very low health ETC, which they probably could have used in that fight, but in the end they were able to turn around quite nicely thanks to a lot of the Blaze plays with his bunker, his sustainability, and just the control they had in and around those fights. So really well done from Crimson to turn that around. But you got to say that considering the experience and talent disadvantage coming out from Outlaws, they did really good in that fight.
100% and without a doubt, but the situation right now is if you're looking at this minimap, the map is lit up blue. Camps are being picked up, lane pressure is there, it's going to force the Haka for the major part of what the next few minutes to stick down there and clear things out. He's doing a great job at that. The one advantage this presents them is reliable XP, which they'll desperately need to make sure they can try and hit 16. The sacrifice of that is these shots that are firing from this temple so far cannot be picked up.
Yeah, they want to get to 16 before a fight can come out, but it looks like Crimson are just going to start to make the play themselves, so they do get the engage.
That they do indeed, putting a lot of pressure onto Iceball Water. They come back in. Still level 16, half level away. What have Crimson done to try and set this one up? They've gone for the push in the bot lane, gone for the push in the top lane as well, but they go for the collapse on in.
He's fine.
Mosh pit interrupted. It's still available if he needs to actually try and use it, but
they get him.
That first pick onto Blaze. The bunker is now gone. KVA looking to try and find that Mosh pit if he can. Divine Shield is there if they do need it, and the Odin is popping damage from afar, but KVA realizes that, hey, if I do a Mosh pit, it's actually not really going to achieve too much. If they pile in like this, though, it's a different story, and then they turn it around. They also talk about the explosive mine. That is something out of this world. Shadow is definitely going to fall, and Iceball, the War Chief, just does not die.
He's so low. They do manage to get the kill though onto the Greymane, and this is the chance for Crimson to turn it back around. It's just 2 for 2. But Azure is almost out of mana. There's only so many spells he can throw out at a time.
These fights so dangerously close, back and forth. The first time Gondo successfully comes in with that flank and they make sure it counts. This is what Outlaws have been looking for, and that sets the scoreboard ablaze. 6 kills now to 3. So let's take a look at the minimap. What was achieved as a result? Bot lane is now firing catapults onto the core. The mid lanes keep dangerously low, and the pressure in the top lane is still against them. So Outlaws still have a bit of a hill to climb.
Yeah, but just considering that all of these fights have been down multiple levels for the side of Outlaws, they are making these fights seem very competitive.
They try and take away the siege camp. Crimson won't allow them. And now they're going to go for the boss. That is the only mercenary camp available on the map. The next temple phase will be one on the top and one on the bot, as separate as you could like. That surely should favor Dehaka in his ability to rotate through, much like when you pick a Dehaka on the Dragon Shire. But the boss control surely has to be a big talking point right now, because if that boss is picked up, it runs straight down bot lane, right onto a core.
Yeah, we've actually got Altivian being the man to go to that top side of the map, and this is allowing Outlaws to be a little bit more aggressive with their positioning, because they know that that massive, well, consistent damage threat is not with him. But now that he's rotated back down, Outlaws do have to play a little bit further back, and I'm just waiting to see, are Crimson going to just try and play patiently, try and get to level 20 before they make their next big play, or do they just want to try and just go in for it and secure that final blow?
Temple phase up in 25 seconds. Some very interesting shot calling could now take place here. If you're on the side of Crimson, do you go for the boss, sacrifice the temples themselves, and just try and force them on a very macro disadvantage heavy kind of decision basis? You're very close to level 20. The flip side of that for Outlaws is, what do? We need to try and force something right now.
Ooh.
That's exactly the case. Icebolt jumps in, forcing out the Riptide, forcing out the Brushstalker as well. A lot of overcommitment here by the Outlaws, and now they need to make something of it.
Yeah, they're just using all of this pressure to just keep on rushing down this bottom side of the map. They are just trying to get as much experience as they can. But because of this, because all of the members are on the bottom side, Crips are just going to rush through mid. There's a very low keep in the Outlaw base, and they're just going to keep on rushing it down. But now realizing that there is the rotation coming out from the Outlaws, they are going to play it a little bit more cautiously.
This was a good call right there to say, look, they're going to be all committed down to bot lane. They've got all their eggs in the basket to try and prevent us from taking this boss. We've completely outmaneuvered them. We've got shots firing in the top side. That's going to look to try and take this keep and finish it off. And Tahaka is on his own doing the bottom temple. He's got 10 seconds left from that Brushstalker, so we have all the time in the world. That should buy us 20. Then, much like Tomb of the Spider Queen, the map before, we can try and force out this boss fight.
Yeah, 20 is now up for the side of Crimson. They have massive advantage in their favor. And although Outlaws are rather close to level 20 themselves, they haven't been able to get any position, or either team haven't really been able to get into a position to force a fight. But now Outlaws, they're moving their way towards the boss. But now we look at both keeps are down, and that is a completely open base on the side of Outlaws.
This changes the things for Crimson right now. Yes, they have 20, but quite honestly, I don't feel like they need to actually force anything, especially not the boss. I would argue, if anything, that's the only way they lose this game right now is if they go for the boss, because if they die, yes, I mean, they've got triple keeps that are constantly pushing against, for them, but the respawn times will be so high that it gets Outlaws right back into the game, potentially going for a keep, and even for the core.
Exactly. This late into the game, one massive teamfight win should spell the end of the game. One of the towers is down on the bottom side, but that could still be an avenue into the base of Crimson, so they have to be very cautious with how they play the rest of this game, but they have a lot of pressure that they can work with. They can play the patient game. They can force Outlaws to respond to them, force them to be nearby this boss for pretty much the rest of the game, and try and allow these catapults to just essentially win the game for them.
You can see that Outlaws respect the fact that, hey, they probably want to go for this boss, but surely they have to respect the fact that at the same time, that's the only way that they lose this game too. Tahaka is pushing top lane. He's got a Night Camp doing it as well. He's looking to try and get that Brushstalker in. The Odin gets dropped on Dan. Now looking for the mosh pit. Divine Shield comes out, followed by the mosh pit. Gets interrupted on the
they get the Greymane.
But they find the Greymane. And now they look for more. They're on towards Icebolt Water. He's dropping low. He gets the heal. He's got the armor. 75
the
armor.
resets.
So he takes little to nothing, but Azure finds the reset. 1, 2, they find a triple. Now they're on the hunt for a 4th kill. But with that many people down for that longer period, the core is in sight. The red nuke is there, and the core is the only place to fire towards.
Yeah, that's the one thing left is Coffee doesn't get the mine, so he is going to get absolutely demolished. And that should be it. Without him there, any slight chance of Outlaws coming back in this have gone down the drain. It's been a long and arduous series, but it is going to be Crimson who secure the 2-1 victory.
Okay, they dancing there with the mosh pit at the end, keeping the minions of the Outlaws happy. A well-fought series, as you said, and a much-needed win in the camp of Crimson after 2 back-to-back stream series. But begs some questions now. Downfall being the big highlight of tonight, but Outlaws back to once again licking their wounds, arguably facing some of the strongest competition between Nomia in week 1 and now Crimson in week 2 to start off their campaign. Many would say surely it gets easier from here on out, but after what we've seen tonight, maybe you take that statement back.
Yeah, looking at Crimson and Nomia to be probably the 1 and 2 towards the end of this season with Outlaws at their heels, but as you mentioned, Downfall, they've come up tonight as potential threat, and Outlaws, yeah, you're kind of looking at their series against Nomia and also against Crimson. They're probably series that they're expecting to probably give up. But now that they've looked at how Downfall have performed, that's another series that they really need to perform in to really pick themselves back up after 2 rather disappointing defeats in the first couple of weeks of this HDC.
There you have it. Game, set, and match all completed on the very first night of week number 2. If you missed any of the games tonight, the VOD will be uploaded to Twitch as well as to the Gamester TV YouTube channel, so be sure to follow that. And if you didn't get a chance to watch all the games or just don't have the time, definitely watch the highlight video, The Calm Before the Clash, a series that wraps up everything quite nicely in a 5-minute window and keeps you informed as to what is going on within our region. These teams are battling it out in the very first ANZ HGC League ever decided. And because of the format that has changed, we no longer go to things like the Western Clash. We now had to face off against other minor regions. So this is why this is also important, these results, because the top 2 teams will be the ones that fly over to Brazil to face off and decide which minor region team is there going to go to the all-important mid-season brawl. Geo Phoenix, any closing words on your side for tonight?
Well, it was a bit of an all sorts of kind of night. We weren't really expecting, well, we didn't really know what to expect coming out from tonight. Well, we're looking at Crimson to be the big powerhouse coming in, probably get 2-2-0s and be done with it. But a real upset in that first series, downfall, just cleaning up. The Crimson showing their strength, showing their composure, comes back in this second series and showing that they are still ready to take one of those 2 spots to the Intercontinental Clash.
There you have it, guys. On the night, 2-0 to Downfall up against Crimson and 2-1 to Crimson up against Outlaws. That does it for week number 2 of day number 1. Be sure to join us back on day number 2. That's Thursday, 7:30 AEDT. Same place, same time. Drop a follow here on Twitch. Until then, have a good night. Stay tuned.